Hey everybody, I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSC Squared podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 289 of the PBSC podcast. I'm Mark Castleman with Steve Moore. My betrayed partner regularly screams and lashes out. How can I help her?
That's quite a title.
It is a title, yeah. I'm sure some people are being triggered already.
Yes,
Just
for
hearing
sure.
that title.
That's something about the screaming in the title. I don't think we've ever put that in a PBSC title. We're almost 300 episodes in, and never once do I think we've used the word
used that.
The term screaming. So
that was what was sent into us. Let me read the submission's fairly short, but this comes in from an addict. So let me read this, and we're gonna jump in and offer some insights on this. So he says, "Thank you for your work on this podcast. I am a former porn user and have put my wife through a lot. She expressed a boundary about pornography use early in our relationship, and I struggled to quit. I was porn-free for a few years, but I slipped up almost 2 years ago and have now been porn-free for a little over a year. Despite my efforts, where I feel like I'm doing everything I can," and then he lists some things, listening to her, listening to this podcast, doing most of the chores around the house, "it's still like it's not enough. She frequently accuses me of lying, especially when I try to apologize. When we argue, she becomes loud and angry and says very hurtful things that she later regrets. The issue becomes resolving these fights. She feels that I'm usually the one that starts it, but I disagree. The problem is that while she's being angry at me, she expects me to apologize and reassure her that I love her. But to me, that's difficult to do when faced with someone screaming at me for being awful. How can I connect in those hard moments and help her like she wants without feeling like I'm giving in to a tirade or indulging unproductive behaviors?"
It's a really good submission. And I'm just going to throw out an unexpected plug here. We always appreciate it when addicts write into the podcast. We do get probably the vast majority of our submissions do come from partners. And of course we appreciate those, but we really appreciate it when you addicts reach out because we know that you have many questions and issues that you face. And whether we answer questions on here from addicts or from partners, we know that it has the potential to be helpful to the other side and vice versa. So
yeah, we really appreciate that.
Yeah, so appreciate you putting yourself out there.
Let's jump in on this. I'll tell you what first occurred to me. I, as an addict in recovery and as one who was not in tune with what I'm about to say, the first thing that Steve and I always offer to addicts in this position is, have you done the deep, and we mean deep, deep work to dig down and fully recognize, realize, articulate, and own the devastating impact that your infidelity and sexual deception has had on your betrayed partner? And I mean the full impact. It took me years to get to that place. I thought I knew, but it wasn't until I really had engaged in conversation with my wife, conversations, where after I created an environment of safety, that she finally felt she had a voice to really speak her truth. And I will tell you, I was quite shocked at some aspects of how much impact my behaviors had had on her. As a guy coming from my addict brain, there was no way that I could fully tune into what this is like for a betrayed partner. And she had to teach me what that impact was. I don't know if this guy really has come to the place where he realizes the full impact.
Yeah.
So that would be a place to start.
Well, and obviously we don't have anything directly from the partner, but just looking at the dynamics of the situation for what it is, one could probably appreciate, this was a problem that was long standing. Then it sounds like by his own accounting, right, resolved. And then after several years sober, like 3 or 4 years sober, then it
Two.
probably 2 years sober.
Yep.
Now here we're back again. And even though he has had a good amount of sobriety since that time, I mean, if I was to read into the situation a little bit, I think for many partners, there would be a lot of the same trauma dynamic at play potentially, or at least could be, in addition to probably a greatly amplified fear, right? In
Well, and
addition, like, oh my gosh, here we are again.
you and I
Yeah.
talk about complex trauma, trauma layered upon trauma, layered upon trauma.
Yeah.
It has a devastating impact on the human brain.
Yeah.
And one of the things that's really telling is she frequently accuses me of lying,
Hmm.
even when I try to apologize. Right? What is when a partner is constantly accusing the addict partner of lying? What's under that? Right? We always ask, what's under this? It's a horrible shattering of trust. I don't trust anything this guy says. And that is an absolutely understandable and expected outcome of this kind of betrayal.
Yeah.
Right? Who is he? Well, he's not who he said he was. Did I ever know this guy? If I can't trust the deepest, most intimate, sacred part of our relationship, then can I trust any of the other stuff that he's telling me or we're doing? Right? Here comes starting to understand the impact.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Well, and as always, even though this is a coupleship dynamic we're talking about, right? The each person within the coupleship, the individual recovery is where things always begin and end at the end of the
Yes,
day.
it does.
And we're going to talk about both of those just briefly here for a minute. I mean, as an addict, for example, right, there is a lot to be done. Self-care, which we addicts are historically abysmal at, is something that it's a rare day. Okay, I don't even say it's a rare day. Never in my practice have I ever said, "Hey, whoa, back up off of all that really good, healthy self-care that's dialing you into your authentic self." Like that's just too much. Unless the self-care is code for like camping or something. Like that's something we all addicts could be better at. Doing your work consistently around self-worth or shame resilience in a dynamic like this, I think is particularly
Oh,
important, right? As Mark, as you
critical.
mentioned in the notes, because we obviously, when you have a spouse who's in this place where either due to trauma or to other factors where she's not able to offer support or encouragement, and she's not in that headspace or place, it can be really difficult. And it's important that we are not just doing the work to cultivate that internally, but that we are always expanding and relying on and accessing our support systems, um, other guys in recovery who get it, uh, professional help if needed, right? Dare to Connect. It's no secret. Our program for addict spouses and couples is a tremendous growing resource for this and will just become more so as we launch a new forum where our members can interact with each other throughout the week in between sessions, and not just during the sessions as they are now, among other things. So we'd love to have you come join us. 2 week trial at dare to connect now.com. We'd love to have you come give that a shot. But um, making sure that you're putting bases in place to create that firm foundation for you when she is in a rocky or triggered or understandably withdrawn or disconnected place, and that's manifesting whether it's in a healthy or unhealthy way. um Absolute necessity, because what we see with guys all the time, and I saw it with me all the time as I look back right on my own pattern. You don't know what you know until, or at the time, until you see it afterwards. But there were so many times where Brittany and I would have a dialogue that went unhealthy, usually on my end, right? And Brittany would be expressing something, and I would try to be meeting her where she was at, but I hadn't done my own individual work. And so, what do I end up doing? My response to her responses, whether they were healthy or not, usually, again, they were, just served to do what? They served to just confirm every fear she had,
Mhm.
right? And justify every reason why she was keeping me at a distance or needing to hold boundaries or whatever the case was.
Yeah. Yeah, because if as we talk about the dramatic impact on our betrayed partners, and now they're trying to figure things out, and often, in fact, I would say it's virtually always the case, recovery from betrayal trauma lags behind the addict getting into recovery.
Yeah.
Addicts will get into recovery, discover this whole new world. They're a racehorse out of the gate. Life's exciting. Oh my gosh, look how awesome this is. Why can't she keep up? That's not how trauma works. And often these partners will, it takes time, sometimes a great deal of time for them to begin to heal. And if I, as an addict, am not doing my own independent, sovereign, my side of the street work, right, separate from her, if you're like I was in early recovery, if my wife was okay, I was okay. If she wasn't okay, I wasn't okay. And I could easily be triggered, by her while she was trying to heal in her trauma, and I would fall apart. What we're about to share with addicts listening, you have to be developing your own solid foundation of self-care, self-worth, shame, resilience, independent of your partner. Because what we're about to describe is not remotely close to easy. So I'm gonna quickly describe something that I teach my addict clients all the time. In fact, I had a client recently where we just talked about this. But she comes at me with this angry face and yelling and her body language is aggressive and she says hurtful things. And you're telling me that I'm supposed to somehow regulate myself and all that? And this is why your own self-care and what you're doing outside of that interaction is so critical, because you've got to come to that fortified, healthy as possible, right? Solid in your foundation, because here's what I tell my guys. When your wife is coming at you like that, even though it doesn't sound like it, it doesn't look like it doesn't feel like it, she is making a bid for connection. Guys will say, whoa, Mark, stop right there. What do you mean a bid for connection? She's trying to rip my head off, right? But she's in the only way that her traumatized, shattered, betrayed brain knows how, she's crying out for help. She's crying out for help. Now, are the words healthy? Is the body language what it could? No, none of those things, but she's doing the best she can, but it is a bid for connection. And as guys, in order for us to step back and put our own insecurities and reactiveness and defensiveness on the shelf for a moment, so that we can actually go, there's more going on here than what I'm seeing and hearing. My partner, what are my partner's actual wants and needs in all of this? Right? Okay, she's crying out for help.
Yeah.
To be able to do that in the heat of the moment, woo, I mean, that is no small thing. And we as guys need to decide if we're going to do the work to be prepared to lead out, lean in, and take that position.
Yeah. Well, and for example, in our Dare to Connect program, we right when clients first enter the program, when subscribers become subscribers, they get a series of training videos that kind of guide them through the basics of the process, as well as the program and the resources and everything that it entails. And one of the things that is talked about in there, and then we have extensive other resources on it, is what we have created called the language of empowerment, or the approach of the empowerment approach, which, among other things, involves always, regardless of the situation, proactively working towards and getting progressively in the habit of looking at my side of the street, so to speak, right? To borrow the 12-step terminology of however toxic the other person may be in this situation. That doesn't mean by any regard that diminishes or absolves me of responsibility of my side, and asking myself, important questions. One of those being, am I doing all that I can in my recovery and or in providing safety, right?
Well, because this guy states a few things, and we have no way of knowing that he is stating everything he's doing. But if we were to guess, he says, I feel like I'm doing everything I can. Then he says, listening to her, listening to your podcast, and doing the chores at home. If you were to tell me you're doing everything in recovery you can, and you listed those three things as what you're doing, I would applaud you for doing those things, but I would say you're missing a lot.
Yeah.
So my first question is, this guy, are you doing everything you can? What does your recovery look like? How
Well, and
diverse and involved is it?
and you bring up a good point, and he doesn't say anything about this, so maybe it is happening, but there's discussion in the submission about, our dialogue and how it goes toxic, but is proactive dialogue happening?
I'm
So what
glad
I'm
you said that phrase.
right. So what we mean by that is rather than just being reactive in the dialogue, which is okay, well now we're in a fight or we're in a disagreement or we're in a conversation where we have to resolve something. Where are, for example, the daily check-ins?
Mm-hmm.
Are we providing those? Am I providing as an addict in recovery? Again, if I'm using that terminology and he is using that, especially on the back of kind of, falling back into this and fairly new into coming back out of it. Have I been taking the time? Have I been putting in the energy up to this point? And am I now proactively trying to lead out and make sure that my partner is as aware of and is able to see and know what my recovery not just looks like in terms of practice, but what I'm actually learning? We call that, we just refer to that as insight. What insights I'm gaining, in what ways I'm growing. Am I sharing those things proactively, or am I not? Now, he very well could be, but and again, we're reading a lot into this, right? Like with any submission, but it doesn't sound like, just based on the years and years Mark and I have been doing this for a long time, it would not shock me to know, if we knew more information about this, that given her responses and her being volatile and very aggressive in their dialogue, oftentimes when I see that exhibit itself, one of the primary causes is an absence of what I'm talking about right now.
Yep. And yep.
She's constantly on the offensive because, or frequently on the offensive because there's such an absence of information about what is going right. She is left in that classic betrayal trauma mantra of, well, I'm the betrayal trauma brain in the absence of information. You all have heard us say it on the podcast before. Neurologically, it's wired to what? It just goes to the worst case scenario. If I don't know what's going on, or if I'm not getting any sort of input about a given situation where trauma is the background, one of the ways I protect myself is I just assume the worst.
I fill in the blanks, right? This guy tells me he's sober, but he never shares with me how he did it today, what he
Yep.
ran into this morning, what insights he gained in his interaction with his support group last night. I don't know how he's doing all this. He just says he is.
Well, and great. The group is a great microcosm, right? I've sat in groups, and hell, I'll be transparent. I've been the guy in a group who, thankfully, more often than not, when I've attended groups, I've been the guy actively engaged, asking questions, whatever. I've also been guilty on a couple of occasions of being the guy in the back of the room playing Angry Birds on my phone.
Yep, me
And it's
too.
like, in both cases, I attended, but right, how much was I participating? What was I learning? In what ways was I engaging? And am I sharing that information with my partner? Because again, if not, guys, it's the brain's natural way of protecting itself. It tries to become acclimated with the worst case scenario in an absence of other information so that it can survive whatever's going to come.
Hey, everybody. PBSE podcast hosts Mark and Steve here with a special message about our revolutionary online recovery program for addict spouses and couples called Dare to Connect. Multiple times every week, we get messages from subscribers in the program. They're people just like you. They're trying to heal from the devastation of sex and porn addiction and betrayal trauma. And here's a few of our most recent submissions. Here's one from an addict in recovery. It says, D2C has principles that everyone should utilize regardless of their circumstances. It doesn't matter your coping mechanisms. It matters that you want to work towards genuine connection with your partner.
That's awesome. Another testimony from an addict continues on. My wife is just starting out in training as a licensed therapist. Dare to Connect has been far more useful to her than her degree.
Wow.
The way Mark and Steve apply what they've learned is always so redemptive. D2C has opened doors for my relationship that I thought would be shut forever. Mark and Steve are an incredible resource of information on the subject of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. We could not do this journey without their help.
Here's one from a partner who's been with us for nearly a year. I want you both to know that it is because of you guys and D2C that I'm able to be in the place that I am today. I will always be grateful to you both for your feedback and prompt replies to my questions. I can't even come close to putting it into words how valuable my time spent with y'all this past year has been to my life. Thank you for everything you taught me about betrayal trauma and boundaries and thinking errors and loving myself and making myself a priority and standing up for myself.
Love that. Love that submission. And then as we close out here today, guys, one more account from another addict in recovery. I wish I had a platform like this 14 years ago where I could have learned and done the hard work of recovery before I had done all this damage to myself and to my spouse. And to be candid with all of you, that's exactly why we created Dare to Connect. Mark and I found ourselves in that place. Messages like these and the others like them, they're what Dare to Connect really is all about, guys, and why Mark and I do what we do. Whether you're an addict or a partner of an addict, and no matter where you find yourself in the recovery process, Dare to Connect can take you to the next level. Don't wait another day to catapult your recovery forward. Today is your day for change. Visit us at daretoconnectnow.com to pick up your free 2-week trial of Dare to Connect today.
Well, and he says, she frequently accuses me of lying. I'll tell you what I hear as soon as I hear that. You shattered the biggest trust that the two of you had in this relationship. Marriage vows, promises of fidelity, all of that was just crushed under the boot of your addiction choices. What are you doing, actively, proactively doing on a daily basis to make little deposits back into that trust account? Are they happening? Right? Are you looking for opportunities to make commitments and follow through on them and deliver on them, showing that you can keep your word in small ways? Right? How are you restoring that trust account, which must have multiple daily deposits? Because we as addicts made a massive withdrawal from that trust account. Yeah. So if a partner says you just keep lying, that probably, if I can look past the defensiveness of hearing that and say, well, okay, wow, I told the biggest lie of our relationship. What am I doing to restore with little deposits of trust each day? Are they visible? Are we talking about them? So that's a thought.
Yep, absolutely. Great point. Well, so there's a lot to be said for this, and we want to make sure that we leave time here for the other side of this as well. But the language of safety, which we talk about on this program, oftentimes comes into play as well. And how am I utilizing that? How am I engaging that?
Yeah. And Steve, I had one note here. We talk about when your betrayed partner's coming at you angry, and you've done your work to be resilient in that moment and to step back. The thing that I often talk about with guys, and I still rehearse this to this day. If my wife is upset, I say, okay, this is a bid for connection. If it wasn't, she would just go indifferent and quiet and wouldn't give a rip about us. But she's passionate. She's letting me know. Where I tried to go in my mindset is my partner is in crisis. Regardless of the source, even if it's me, my partner is in crisis and I am going to come to her aid. And I try to step into that mindset instead of defending my ego or my position or my hurtness or whatever. Hey, my partner's in crisis right now. I can see that. I can hear that. I'm going to come to her aid. And that's where the language of safety comes in, right? As a kind of a practical use of language in that moment. And Steve, you talk about that a lot. You've developed that over, more than a decade.
Yeah, I mean, there are many different parts to it, right? But I know we've talked about this on other podcasts, so we won't spend much time on this at all. But the 4 steps are essentially, recognition, right? Validation. So recognizing, that our partner's struggling, validating the reasons why, um, asking is, letting them know, providing actual safety by letting them know and being transparent about here's what I'm doing to work on things, or here's what I'm committed to doing to try to help with this situation specifically. And then the last but not least step being, is there anything else that I can be doing right now? Is there anything else that you need? Um, and moving through and taking those steps and personalizing it, but more or less, that's what we refer to as that language of safety. And it's important to be providing that, and that obviously stems from that place of empathy, right? Recognizing that we've let out, and in a lot of these issues, we've caused many of these problems. Um, Now, having said all of that, okay, we're going to talk about the whole taking a break piece, but it's an expand because we talk about that a lot on this program. But we're going to do that through the expansion and through the lens of what else is going on here. Okay, because obviously this is a coupleship, and addressing this guy in a different lens. Having said all that, we also recognize that he's an addict, which almost ubiquitously by definition also means that he struggles at least at times with self-esteem, self-worth, or shame issues.
Mhm.
Um, One of the hardest dynamics I think for coupleships to break out of once the trend has started in a relationship, and is where once betrayal has occurred, there's a betrayer, and there's the betrayee, right? There's the perpetrator and the victim, right? However you want to term it. Once a relationship starts to shift into a power dynamic of, I don't know how else to put it. So, for lack of a better term, I'm breaking my no swearing rule today. You're the piece of shit in this relationship, and I'm not, right? Whether that's implied or actually discussed, even if it's just internal on the part of the addict or on the part of the partner, it creates all sorts of other problems in the recovery process because it introduces a power dynamic that is difficult to write. Because marriages, committed relationships can only function long term and be sustainable if they are progressively moving back towards what they were always supposed to be, which is an egalitarian positioning, right? Where both people are equal. And oftentimes the addict finds himself, whether it's on his end or her end, or maybe it's just it sort of happens. There tends to be kind of this trend of, well, he caused all the damage, so now he's quote unquote lower in the relationship, right? Or not as deserving of certain things. And we see this frequently in relationships where guys from a place of shame or a place of not healthy accountability will say, well, yeah, I am the screw up, so I deserve to be treated this way.
Mhm.
It's important that if there are any addicts listening to that, and partners as well, that if you see that dynamic in your relationship, it is something that needs to be corrected sooner than later. Um, to every addict listening, and Mark and I say this as two guys who've caused a lot of damage in our relationships and still stumble more than we would like from time to time. Um, Being the damage causer or the quote unquote perpetrator or the betrayer does not also constitute a surrendering of your rights to respect as an individual. Um, Relationships can only heal, and we can only find healing long term if sooner or later we are able to adopt principles, concepts, and boundaries and agreements that are reflective of an egalitarian relationship. And that includes communication boundaries that go both ways.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
Partners, and although we don't see this happen, like I said, actively or on purpose a lot of time, but sometimes it does occur passively. Partners are not entitled to quote unquote more toxic communication or being emotionally more aggressive or whatever simply because they've been betrayed. Um, Again, it's understandable when that dynamic develops. There's understandably a lot of anger and frustration at the beginning. That cannot continue, and that has to be worked on in recovery, just like anything else on the addict's part. Partners also, if a relationship is to be sustainable, they are expected to also likewise work their individual recovery, and that involves progressively becoming better at managing your own trauma-based responses.
Yeah.
Emotions are always valid. The way we respond to them are not. And it's
Well,
important that we're taking accountability for that on both sides.
and Steve, you and I have seen this for decades in our own lives and working with people all over the world. Here's the great problem with toxic communication. Even though we understand that there are reasons behind it, right? A betrayed partner has every right to be angry and to express that anger, right? We never say shut down your anger, shut down your valid feelings. There's always a place for those. When it becomes toxic, right? Screaming, name calling, belittling, all the stuff that can so easily happen. The great challenge with that is that regardless of the reason behind it, it is never effective. It never gets us to what I think, I think the underlying reason behind the way, even if we're toxically communicating, we're yearning, we're desperate for resolve, for healing, for answers, to be heard. There's a lot of good reasons can happen behind toxic communication, but it never gets us where we really want to go. What does it do instead? It progressively destroys the relationship.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And there's obviously more to say on that, and which is such is the case when, there's always more to say. That's why we always come back for more episodes. But we do hope that each of you will be able to take that to heart because there is a lot to, there is a lot to this process. There's a lot to be done. Um, as long as there's progress, guys, in a relationship, there's hope. There's
Yes.
potential. Or
Yes.
relationships, on whatever area of your relationship that you're working on your own or on your own individual recovery, as long as there's momentum and as long as there's a vulnerability to change and to openness to new ideas, the opportunities for recovery and for healing are off the charts high. We see it all the time in our practices and in our Dare to Connect program. As always, if you like what you hear in Dare to Connect, this will be my probably least affirmative, it's a good way to put it, plug for our Dare to Connect program that you've heard in a while. If you like what you hear in or in the podcast, if every week for a half hour, or if you're binge watching this for the first time, we get a lot of messages about that because we continue to grow and who accesses the podcast. If you like what you hear here, you will do nothing but love Dare to Connect. Um, I wish, and I know Mark does as well, we've talked about this before, that we had gotten more serious sooner about this process as addicts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Um, in any addiction, there is a cycle that we see far too often. Mark and I have both worked in inpatient treatment programs for chemical dependency. You see it there, you see it in this addiction. Too often, addicts sit by and either half heartedly pursue recovery and change or outright refuse or are stubborn or drag their feet or avoid or whatever the case is. And while that happens, relationships, family, friends, uh, children all languish. And one of the biggest tragedies that we see happen in any addiction, this one being one of many, is when the addict, for whatever reason, hits a certain critical mass and then decides to get serious. But there is so much damage that has been done. Too often we see with relationships and marriages where a partner says it's too late.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
been too much. It's too late. There's too much here. It's a bridge too far. I don't feel like it's authentic for me to risk it, etc. Take it from two guys who know because we do this clinically in our sessions and with our clients not often, but more often than we would like. There is nothing more tragic than seeing a partner say to an addict, I don't want to leave, but I can't stay with you anymore. That is awful. Change today. Change now. There's a 2-week free trial going on for Dare to Connect right now. We are continuing to bring on new services. I've mentioned a couple of times on the program that our Dare to Connect forum, where you can interact and engage with members. That's coming in the next several weeks. Um, in addition to all the interactivity, the support sessions that we have on the weekends, the 3 sessions for addict spouses and couples throughout the week, our D2C Academy of now we're coming up on a 3rd course that we're releasing next week. More details about that later. I mean, we are doing amazing things there. Guys, for the cost of 2 therapy sessions or less, depending on where you live in the country, both you and your partner can be accessing over 30 some odd hours of content every week
Every month.
and interactive content every month
Yeah.
and getting the help that you need. You will have access to more resources than you ever thought you needed. Is it individual therapy? No, never will be. Not supposed to be. Is it damn close? Especially for the bang for the buck? Hell yes. All right, that's done with that's done. I'm done with the genocide. Get your amazing recovery asses into Dare to Connect. Dare to Connect. DareToConnectNow.com. There's a 2-week free trial. You can come grab and take a look.
Yeah. Thanks for being here with us. As always, appreciate all of you. If you have questions, send them through the PBSC website. It's daretoconnectnow.com. But when you look at the top of it, you'll see the PBSC banner. You can go in there and send us questions through the contact form. Or if you want your questions answered immediately right away, just come on to Dare to Connect, where we do it, 5 times a week.
Yep. There's a
So,
support session this weekend. We'd love to have you come join it.
love to have you.
Yep.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next time on PBSC, and hope you have a good day, rest of your day and week.
Bye-bye.
Everything expressed on the PBSC podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.